Our second case study is actually I wanted to talk through a school street that we have now had in place for a year around our primary school. And it's really flagship school street. It's a fantastic, amazing program, and it has completely transformed the journey for so many children in the area. And I'm pretty sure the air quality, although we will find that out over the next few months when we analyse the data. But I'm going to explain a bit about the school street, and then on the next slide there's how we used our breathe monitor, which we had in our playground, to kind of mobilise action and mobilise the community around this campaign. So this is again around a school in South East London, where our local children's primary school, and it sits on top of a zebra, like a healthy route. So it was already a cycle lane and zebra crossing, which was brilliant. It had about 7 zebra crossings in the area and a cycle lane, but actually the sheer numbers of children that were walking and cycling to school, interacting with so much traffic, we had about 3 children hit in the area within an 18-month period. Not severely, but still, no child should have that kind of danger on the way to school. So it was still not a safe or healthy environment. You can see the kind of congestion that was building up around the school playgrounds in the bottom there. So after a 5-year campaign, we got our school street launch last September. So it's around 2 kilometres of road closed to cars to protect 2 schools. It's one really big primary school and the Sen school next door. So it's not just a small road, it's a huge expansive area that's actually closed between 8 and 9 to, or 8:15 and 9:15 to kind of prioritise children's journeys. Has 4 ANPR cameras. And it filters 3 roads because the school sort of sits between 2 roads. So it's not just doing one side, it's treating both sides of the school. And the main road that it was quite a busy thoroughfare that it has addressed, and had about 800 cars per hour between 8 and 9 a.m. Going through it. So most of the traffic on the road was actually not to access the schools itself, it was kind of just 3 traffic. But anyway, yeah, you can see the pictures. It is now a glorious school street, and it's the most ambitious one certainly that Lambeth have ever implemented. And it's lovely because they are now using this as a kind of precedent to say, well, we've done it here, we can actually tackle lots of more ambitious kind of programmes in the borough. So that's really exciting, and also very personally gratifying, having spent about 5 years trying to make it happen. It was a long process, and we've a very detailed case study written up about it on our website for anybody interested or doing something in their area, that goes into a lot of detail around kind of community campaigning and sort of how we answer queries around traffic displacement and things like that. But I've really just focused here on actually how the breathe monitor came into play. So I'd say the first thing that I think was really important retrospectively looking at our campaign was having really clear goals. So as I said, this was with a community group, part of the Breathe London programme called Rosendale Clean Air and Safe Routes. And I think we always try to make sure with our community and parents we were involving and are activating that we did have quite clear campaign goals. And to be honest, that always was a school street. But when it took 5 years to happen and the council kind of kept on saying no. So during that period, we then said, okay, well, we're going to try and get our TfL Stars Gold award, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. It's the kind of TfL Active Travel Programme, and schools get accredited for how many activities they do. So we kind of worked towards that, and we got that. And now we've actually got the school street in place. We're saying, okay, well, great, we've got school street, but children need to actually be able to access it. So we need some zebra crossings on the main roads around the access to the school street. So always having quite a clear goal, I think, really makes people very more willing to give their time and to be involved, because they kind of can see what you're striving towards. That was really important. I would say that the breathe monitor that we got was a really big step change in our school street campaign, and I was really trying to pick apart exactly why that was, and I think these are the key points. You've seen the picture there, like one of our stalls that we did, and so it looks a little bit of a mess. It was all based around the breathe monitor. So I think the first way it really helped is that it made what we were talking about relatable to that exact school, to our exact parent community. We weren't just talking abstractly about air pollution being a general London problem. You know, it was in our playground, and you could see that it was at unhealthy levels, and linked to it, and you know, put it in the school newsletters, and it just made it much more relatable, I think, as a problem for parents, not only parents at the school, but actually residents in the wider area that kind of had concerns about the school street. It was very helpful to be able to say, well, aren't you concerned that all these children are kind of, you know, breathing in this quality of air in their playgrounds? Within our group, it enabled lots of different skill sets to come to the fore. So we had parents who with data backgrounds that really liked analysing the data. We had very creative, artistic parents who kind of were much more interested in how you can translate that to something very interactive and fun for kids. So they kind of made this dial that you can see in that picture, where you kind of children would use that dial to kind of gauge where they thought the air pollution was, but then we could have the real kind of charts for parents and so on. And it just gave us a real focus for centering our activities around, because I think sometimes everything can be quite abstract with air pollution, so it's quite difficult to think, oh, how are we going to engage people and how are we going to do this? And it just was something so much more concrete that we could get new ideas from and kind of center our community activating around. And really importantly, it enabled sort of tracking and monitoring. So I think at one point when it was in place, there was a really big fire quite near us in a warehouse, and we could see live like what that was doing to the kind of pollution in the playground, which again is awful, but also quite an activating kind of incident for parents, because it's really concerning, and being able to track that directly was really powerful. And then the monitoring, you know, we have not yet analysed the air quality from the school street, because we're kind of going to wait for it to be in place for a full year, but I'm sure it will have really improved, and then that will be really exciting to be able to kind of feedback to the community. So yeah, that was kind of really how the Breathe monitor helped in our campaigning, and how, some of the key takeaways for our community campaign that was very much centered around the school, and the school was at the heart of it. The third piece that we also found really helpful was using sustainable travel data. And that is actually something that we developed through Solve the School Run, which I'll jump into in a sec. And we kind of used in tandem with our Breathe monitor pollution levels to kind of make the case for change. So how am I doing for time, Maddie? Have I got 10 minutes to just jump into this part?
I think you're absolutely fine. Go ahead.
Brilliant. Okay, is everyone with me? Just everyone's with me so far. Brilliant. Okay, so this is all around how we used sustainable travel data to put children's active travel at the heart of the campaigning. So it was at the heart of our campaign for cleaner air in their playgrounds. It was kind of at the heart of our campaign for the school street around the school, and it was really at the heart of even things like a zebra crossing to make it easier to walk and cycle. So what we did with Solve the School Run is we developed a data dashboard, which I'm going to jump into live in a minute, for every London primary school, which basically, as you can kind of see here, shows how far children are travelling to their school, and it provides an estimate of how they're most likely to be making their journeys. So in this here, this is a picture of it here, and you can see that this is for all of London. You can basically see there's about 600,000 pupils in London who are already walking and cycling to school. And there's about 200,000 who are driven to school. This is for primary pupils. So the good news is that's a huge number of pupils already walking and cycling. And, you know, I think that our feeling is that children are not put at the heart of travel policies enough. You know, those 600,000 primary pupils are already walking and cycling. So really, that's why they deserve school streets and zebra crossings and all those things. They don't have what they should have to have safe and healthy journeys to school. But at the same time, obviously, it's a real problem that while those journeys are happening, you've got 200,000 primary pupils being driven to school, and that creates pollution and road danger. And of course, as many journeys that we can convert to walking and cycling, the better. And what this does is it breaks down. So in the green here, you can see for each distance band, so sort of under a mile, 1 to 2 miles, over 2 miles, you can get a sense of how many within that distance band are travelling sustainably and how many are driven. So, and that is based on London averages for those distance bands. So we know in London that if a primary school child is travelling under a mile to their school, then on average in London, this is from the National Travel Survey, about 7% of those journeys will be driven. But if a primary school child is travelling between 1 and 2 miles to their primary school, 65% of those journeys will be driven. So distance has a huge impact on how children are getting to school. And again, you can see the majority of journeys in London that are driven are in that kind of 1 to 2 mile, for primary pupils, are in that 1 to 2 mile band. So that is absolutely the distance band that we need to solve and we need to help parents with in order to reduce school run traffic and to kind of improve air quality at that peak time. But what I'm going to do, because you can filter this dashboard to get your school information, and I think that that piece might be really helpful to the school working group here. So I'm just going to jump into the dashboard itself. I think I need to reshare my screen, so just bear with me a second. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so this comes out quite small, and I'm not going to spend long on it because I don't want everyone squinting, but can you all see a dashboard?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, fab. So this is that same view, and there's lots of other views that you can look at your data by borough and by ward or by school type, where you can kind of delve into primary and independent schools or faith schools and so on. But I'm not going to actually go through all of that now because it's a lot of information to take in at 4:30 on a Tuesday. But I think I just wanted to show you an example of, for example, I'm going to go in now, and the school I was talking about was Rosendale Primary School, and this should have information for every London primary school, so it should very much have your own school. And the distances the distance information is based on catchment information. So the distances that this is showing, those are all really, pretty close to, this was taken from the school travel census of 2022. So this is going to be really quite well up to date. And as you can see for this school, 500 children, roughly, pupils are already walking or cycling to school, and about 100 are driven. And of course, most of them live, within a mile of their school. So most of them are travelling under a mile, with some with most of that driving happening between 1 and 2 miles. And as I said, the way that the kind of the travel mode is calculated, it's in terms of how many are travelling sustainably, or how many are being driven. That is based on a London average. That's not going to be exact for your school, but the point actually is that we don't have very good data for schools on how children are travelling. So it's just giving us a kind of estimate based on their distance. But do go and have a play around, have a look for your school. And if you've got questions, let us know. We have also, which I won't go into now, but we've got a full campaigner's guide on how you can use that data to and sort of lots of key findings we've got on the school run generally around where it's coming from and how many, London level trends, how you can use that to to kind of empower campaigns in your area, whether you're celebrating active journeys to primary schools, you're making case for school streets, or you're highlighting the problem of school and car trips. It can help in lots of different ways. And because, data can be quite intimidating to some people, and we've kind of just hopefully broken down some quite simple use cases of how you can use this data to complement some of your campaigning activities. And then just to jump back into some examples of how we did it. And again, I mean, we use it all the time, to be honest, to sort of justify or in our campaigning in Lambeth and Southwark. But I'm going to just jump back into my PowerPoint to show you some of those examples. So bear with me. Is that back up and running? Yes.
Yeah.
So the first way that we think it's really important that you can use sustainable travel data is in support, in kind of showing local councillors, if you're asking, your council for a school street or a zebra crossing, or if you are asking your council to take action, It's letting them know how many children are already travelling sustainably. Like we saw in London that 75% of primary pupils are already walking and cycling to school. In some areas, it will be much higher than that. But the difficulty is that what we found through all of the consultations and all of the change that's happened to our area, that those families who were already walking or cycling to school, you know, with no safe crossings or with polluted roads or, with no kind of none of the safety measures that they need, they are really underrepresented in kind of consultations and feedback to councillors, precisely because they are parents, they've got young kids, they've got jobs, jobs that they're working on. They're kind of doing the drop off and rushing off to school, and they haven't got the time to respond to consultations or to lobby councillors and say, like, this is not safe and we really want change. So but it's really important that the councils know that they're there. So we kept on saying to our councillors, look, for the cycle lane and school street, we were like, in your ward there are already 1,000 primary children walking or cycling to school. You're not going to hear from them every day because their parents are busy and they've got young kids and they're doing bedtime and all of this, but they are all going to benefit from these measures. Why are you not prioritizing them against maybe some other issues that you're kind of placing more of a focus on? So it's letting them know the sheer volumes of people already making these journeys sustainably, I think, is really important, because they won't hear from them all the time. And I think another lens that's really important, maybe with local authorities or with councillors or even local residents, actually we found it really helpful, is to kind of challenge this car-centric data. So often, because there's not really any we didn't find there's not much data available on how children are travelling generally. Certainly no school level information is very easily available. It's just and whereas traffic counts does tend to be more available. So that can kind of centre councillors or authorities, or kind of it can centre initiative around like the traffic. So we heard constantly with our school street that traffic volumes are too high to put in a school street, right? But we said, well, okay, maybe there's 800 cars going down that road an hour, but there's way more people walking and cycling. We could see from our data that there's at least 1,200 people walking and cycling at that time, at the very minimum, and most likely it's more like 2,000. So even accounting for having maybe, 2 people in a car or 1.5 person per car, there were just so many more people walking and cycling in that area than there were cars. But there was no data on that. That was not seen. It was just like, well, we can't do a school street because there's just too much traffic. There's 800 cars an hour. It's not going to work. And we had to push back on that, and we found that centering it around sustainable travel data and the numbers there just meant it was really difficult to argue, like, why was that road being prioritized for drivers when there were so many more people using it to walk and cycle along. So yeah, that's another kind of interesting way that you can use some of the data that we've got available for schools. And yeah, I think this last slide is just a bit of inspiration. On this side, back from our school street, like the before was awful. It was really bad. You can see from the picture on the left. It was just such a mess of through traffic and people trying to access the schools, and it was really polluted. It was really horrible. And now, for that 1 hour a day, it is actually almost paradise because there's cycle lanes and there's zebra crossings, and the cars are restricted, and there are so many people walking and cycling. It's really quite extraordinary. And if anybody wants to come down and sort of have a look and just stand on a corner for 15 minutes and seeing this really lovely kind of joyful school run, then yeah, please get in touch, because we'd be very happy to see if anyone at all. So just to summarise on the sort of, I'm very happy to take questions on all of this, but to summarise on the data that I was just showing you, our data dashboard, in terms of its use cases, definitely can be used for lobbying for safer, greener school runs, can be used to kind of support borough programmes, so like Lambeth Council or a council, when they kind of are finding it helpful to kind of justify their school street programmes and so on. And of course, it can be used for campaigning for school streets, zebra crossings, all those children making those journeys. deserve, all those programs, and you can put them at the heart of your campaigning with that data. And then just in terms of what's upcoming, so I appreciate this was a really quick whistle-top tour of the data that and some of the resources available on our website, but we are going to be doing some webinars that go into a bit more detail on it and provide a bit more insight in use cases. And we are also, as I said, like, we use it very powerfully an awful lot in our campaigning in Lambeth and Southwark, and that's obviously because we're very used to it and we know the ins and outs of the dashboard because we developed it. But we're looking for borough champions who might want to sort of, spend a bit more time than just a webinar, kind of interacting with us on it, and using it as a tool in their boroughs, and maybe supporting other groups with it as well. So we're kind of looking for anyone who might be interested in that kind of role, or just kind of that kind of activity. So to get in touch if that sounds of interest. And I think that's me. So I'm gonna stop sharing and really happy to take questions.